What's up, cool people? My name's Matt, aka That Random Christian Gamer. Welcome to tonight's live stream. I forgot that the whole transition thing went away from my OBS presets recently. Not sure why that happened, but anyway. Hello, a little bit more suddenly than normal. Yeah. I picked this music because I'm trying to look on, the bright side of temperatures being absolutely scorching hot today. Oh, man. And, of course, I had to work in a place where the inside temperature is really not much different than the outside temperature. So, yeah. I've been, I've been hot all day. Anyway, outside of that, there is also kind of the news that tonight is going to be my last Thursday night live stream for a while. Not 100% sure how long, but the estimate presented to us last week was that it would be like 3 months. So yeah, starting next week, because of extra work time, yeah, live streams will be combined into one. I mean, I'm not going to say 100% sure, but, like, yeah, tomorrow we'll also... See, Friday, I think, is actually a little more likely to make a reappearance during the time frame where the work schedule is shifted or changed around, whatever you want to call it. Because, like, there might be some things going on where I'll be doing stuff on Saturdays, in which case I might try and make stuff work on Fridays. It would just be, like, Friday nights. But, yeah, Thursdays would definitely not be a good idea any week that I'm working on, the Friday morning, which it seems like is going to be pretty much every week, unless I decide to use up some of my vacation time to get out of some of that. First Blood, hey, nice to see you. Hope you're doing well. But yeah, anyway, so just assume that unless otherwise noted, I will not be streaming on Thursday nights or Friday afternoons for at least a few months. So yeah, that's a thing. Anyway, tonight's stream is going to be the usual Thursday night thing, starting off with Bible study, and then I'll play a game and we could just chill and chat in the meantime. I have prepared for the possibility of lots of Underspire in Gems of War. But I haven't done much, so I don't know if y'all are actually going to get to see the end result of me stockpiling the resources to get further in that. But anyway, okay. And the first ad break has already kicked in. I'm going to take that as my cue to maybe get the Bible study stuff ready here. I will answer Seth's question when we're back from the ad break, I guess. Seth of 70 stream streak at this point. Right. There's what I want to pull up now. Yeah, I really should get looking into the whole transition thing, the scene transition thing. I don't know why that went away. It was just kind of poof, randomly gone. I think last week. But anyway, let's see here. How long are these chapters? Maybe long-ish. And then that one's not so long. Okay. Seth, to answer your question, yes, I do have dice at the ready. I mean, we could do the usual, you submit the redemption, and then I'll roll for the exercise later. At least I imagine that's what is being considered here. Anyway, just making sure you had them ready for See, that's so when I said before that I wanted to see how far I could get in the Underspire, I envisioned not doing dice stuff and just plowing through as far ahead as I could. Because I haven't tried to do that since they changed around some of the stuff with, like, it basically warping you further along. But, anyway, we can talk a little more about that later. I mean, it was kind of my idea to do that. So, anyway. Okay, yeah. I should stop delaying the Bible study stuff and hop into that now. So, here we go. All right. So we're looking at Job chapter 31. How to briefly summarize the things that have happened so far. I mean, the first couple of chapters were talking about Job, his general life situation and how good it was. God pointed him out as a good example to this being called Satan, but maybe more accurately the accuser or the adversary. So God points Job out as an example of a very good and righteous man. But Satan's all like, well, you gave him such a good life. Take his stuff away and test him some, and we'll see what he does. So then the testing started, and, you know, Job was obviously distraught. some friends came around to try to comfort him at first, but then he said some stuff that they didn't like the way that it sounded theologically, so they then pretty much got into a long debate, argument, whatever you want to call it, with Job, where they have continued to insist that he's in the wrong, he must have sinned. But Job's like, no, I'm innocent. I've done nothing wrong. God just wanted me to go through this for some reason, I don't know. But yeah, it seems the back and forth is done at this point. Job has been the only one speaking for the past few chapters, kind of talking about in greater detail what his situation was like before, what it's like now, and just how even despite that, he still views God as, you know, the source of wisdom, the keeper of life, the insert analogy for, you know, what we generally associate God with. So, yeah, that's kind of what's been happening up to this point. And we get more from Job in this chapter as well. So let's see what else he says here in Job chapter 31. I made a covenant with my eyes not to look with lust at a young woman. For what has God above chosen for us? What is our inheritance from the Almighty on high? Isn't it calamity for the wicked and misfortune for those who do evil? Doesn't he see everything I do and every step I take? Have I lied to anyone or deceived anyone? Let God weigh me on the scales of justice, for he knows my integrity. If I have strayed from his pathway, or if my heart has lusted for what my eyes have seen, or if I am guilty of any other sin, then let someone else eat the crops I have planted. Let all that I have planted be uprooted. Alright. Pausing there for a bit. Gotta say, I didn't expect the sort of focus on lust to kick off this chapter, but hey, you know. I guess this is kind of further evidence, for lack of a better word. Job's talking more about, you know, how he still has this mindset of following God, and, you know, he doesn't say when he made this covenant, but if he's married, which he is, last we knew, it would have probably been no later than that point when he made this covenant. But, yeah. I guess he mentioned in, not the last chapter, but 2 chapters ago, I guess, more so, you know, some of the positive things that he did for people around him that kind of demonstrated, you know, his desire to follow God that way. This kind of almost gives us another way that he's following God, in that he is abstaining from things that are, you know, not what God wants. Which, especially in the Old Testament, this in particular is a bit interesting, because, like, there were definitely many significant figures in the Old Testament that had multiple wives. So, again, I'm not saying in the current day that that's something God wants for us. In fact, nearly if not truly every situation where a man had multiple wives that was mentioned in the Old Testament, it caused some sort of trouble. So, yeah, there's kind of a hint that maybe it's not something that God thinks is ideal. But in any case, Job here is, talking about how he has tried not to lust over just, I would almost insert any other woman besides his wife. He's also talking about not lying or deceiving anyone or asking if he has done that. This almost makes me wonder a little bit, because a while back, I think it was Eliphaz, kind of gave a list of possibilities that he recited to Job, saying like, well, you must have done something out of these things to get on God's bad side, to have all this bad stuff happen to you. But now this could be viewed as Job coming around and being like, well, do you have any evidence of me doing these things? Does anyone out there know of any examples where I have lied, deceived, lusted after someone I shouldn't? I mean, lust kind of has a negative connotation in any case, even if it is talking about one's own wife, but I digress. But yeah, in any way at all, quote, if I have strayed away from his pathway, then he's actually like kind of invoking a curse upon himself, if that is at all true. Which I could see God taking issue with that, but I'm not going to project onto the situation or make assumptions about it. In any case, okay. This chapter's not super short, so I should move along. Verse 9. If my heart has been seduced by a woman, or if I have lusted for my neighbor's wife, then let my wife serve another man. Let other men sleep with her. For lust is a shameful sin, a crime that should be punished. It is a fire that burns all the way to hell. It would wipe out everything I own. If I have been unfair to my male or female servants when they brought their complaints to me, how could I face God? What could I say when he questioned me? For God created both me and my servants. He created us both in the womb. So, this one's not so much calling a curse upon himself as a, like, okay, well, if I've really done this kind of stuff, then it would kind of be a fair punishment to have this happen. Like, that was actually something that, the place where I worked when I was at the one boarding school, kind of tried to emphasize when possible with giving punishments, or what they called consequences, for when the students we supervised did stuff they shouldn't. So, like, if the problem was that they were, on their phone when they weren't supposed to be, you take the phone away. If the problem was that, they got into a fight with somebody over, some, I don't know, let's say a video game or something, then, okay, well, no games for you for X amount of time. just, I'm not saying this is necessarily equivalent in any way, but just something that came to my mind as I read this section and, what Job essentially thought he would deserve if he had done these bad things. And I'm just realizing, okay, didn't miss any notes before this section. Of course, talking about the servants, that's just him saying, him questioning whether he would really, be able to stand before God as he was inclined to when, if he had done these things. Because really, yeah, whether servant or master, everyone was created by God. So how could he pretend to be right before God if he has mistreated someone else that God has made? He also, going back to this section here, verses 9 through 12, he also says some significant things about lust in general. It's a shameful sin. And basically, yeah, if he has this kind of attitude about lust, about treating servants unfairly, or about lying and deceit, then kind of stemming from the previous conversation, it's like, his friends had questioned if he was really in the right mindset to still recognize his own sin. Clearly he is, based on this and other things that he's said. Or at least it certainly seems likely that he would be able to recognize such sin if he has this mindset about these various kinds of sin. Okay. I'm going to look at these notes here. First, it says in verse 10. Okay, so where he says, "Then let my wife serve another man," rather than serve, the Hebrew could be read as grind for, probably like grinding in like a mill, grinding out wheat or flour, I guess it would be, or, that as working for another man, essentially. But I mean, that's just my understanding. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on that. Sorry. Note here in verse 12. Interesting. Hang on. So the way it reads in the main text says, "It's," meaning lust, "is a fire that burns all the way to hell." The note there comes after the word hell, so I assume that's what it's meant to kind of substitute for. The Hebrew says to Abaddon, which Abaddon was what it said the Hebrew was before when it talked about, like, the destroyer. Or at least that's what I seem to remember. So now we've got Abaddon being used as both a being and a place. This is one of the reasons why translating isn't the easiest task. But anyway, okay. Notes have been viewed. Let me move on to verse 16. Because, yeah, I've already taken up 16 minutes, and this chapter is 40 verses. So, verse 16. Have I refused to help the poor, or crushed the hopes of widows? Have I been stingy with my food and refused to share it with orphans? No, from childhood I have cared for orphans like a father, and all my life I have cared for widows. Whenever I saw the homeless without clothes, and the needy with nothing to wear, did they not praise me for providing wool clothing to help keep them warm? I accidentally added the word help in there, oh well. If I raised my hand against an orphan, knowing the judges would take my side, then let my shoulder be wrenched out of place. Let my arm be torn from its socket. That would be better than facing God's judgment. For if the For if the majesty of God opposes me, what hope is there? Yeah. So now, this almost kind of paints a slightly different light on his previous statements, especially right near the end of that section, when he said having his shoulder wrenched out of place would be better than facing God's judgment. I almost wonder if that statement was also sort of meant to be applied to the previous judgments that he called upon himself, essentially. But otherwise, yeah, more examples of... I mean, now we've got some of the positive examples again of, like, helping the poor, widows, orphans. And specifically, he says that the judges... Well, okay, he says, if I raise my hand against an orphan, knowing the judges would take my side. I'm curious if he's thinking just, like, across the board, it's likely that the judges would have taken his side because of how respected he was in the community. See a couple of chapters ago for, more on that matter. Or is he saying, okay, specifically, if I did this because I knew in that instance that the judges would take my side? I'm not sure. Either one could really apply here, and honestly, it wouldn't make a ton of difference to the overall point. But I think this could also be, if it's the former of those two options, Job kind of saying, yeah, I might have actually had enough influence to, abuse some of that power if I really wanted to. I didn't, but, I recognize that that was a possibility. But am I not that much more righteous, or is it not that much more of an example of how I have followed God that I didn't do this? In fact, if I did it, then basically it just hurt me because I deserve it. Again, sort of related punishment, because he's talking about if he raised his hand against, then tear out his shoulder. The arm is used for the bad thing. Hurt the arm. But I digress. Alright. Verse 24. Have I put my trust in money or felt secure because of my gold? Have I gloated about my wealth and all that I own? Have I looked at the sun shining in the skies, or the moon walking down its silver pathway, and been secretly enticed in my heart to throw kisses at them in worship? If so, I should be punished by the judges, for it would mean I had denied the God of heaven. Have I ever rejoiced when disaster struck my enemies, or become excited when harm came their way? No, I have never sinned by cursing anyone or by asking for revenge. My servants have never said, "He let others go hungry." I have never turned away a stranger, but have opened my doors to everyone. Have I tried to hide my sins like other people do, concealing my guilt in my heart? Have I feared the crowd or the contempt of the masses, so that I kept quiet and stayed indoors? If only someone would listen to me. Look, I will sign my name to my defense. Let the Almighty answer me. Let my accuser write out the charges against me. I would face the accusation proudly. I would wear it like a crown. For I would tell him exactly what I have done. I would come before him like a prince. If my land accuses me, and all its furrows cry out together, or if I have stolen its crops or murdered its owners, then let thistles grow on that land instead of wheat, and weeds instead of barley. And then it notes that Job's words are ended. So, yeah, really, broadly speaking, more examples of things that Job could potentially have done wrong if he were just any regular person who, did bad things every now and then. But he asks it as sort of a rhetorical question because he's essentially setting it up to say, hey, if any of you out there knows anything about me doing this bad stuff that I'm talking about, then bring it before me and all the judges, and they can, pronounce a verdict upon me and, a punishment for what I have done wrong. But it's a rhetorical question because he is confident that there is no such case. Even in all these different things that people do sometimes, especially wicked people. Yeah, he's like, I challenge you. I dare you even. So, yeah, he feels pretty confident that he has done nothing wrong, which then begs the question with respect to his friend's previous arguments. If I haven't done anything wrong, if you can't find anything that I have done wrong, then why do you continue accusing me of sin simply because I am experiencing hardship? Your theological framework of, how God interacts with people must not be right if this has happened and I have not sinned. Because, yeah, it's like, to the best of our knowledge, and seemingly anyone's ever, he did not lust after another woman. He did not, treat anyone poorly. He didn't even he mentioned somewhere in this latest section that I read, I think, or maybe I don't know. He said at some point that he didn't even rejoice at the misfortune of his enemies, essentially. He hasn't trusted in money or worshipped something besides God. Oh yeah, there we go. Have I ever rejoiced when disaster struck my enemies? That was in verse 29. So, in all these hypotheticals, he's essentially daring somebody to find a case against him. And because he is so convinced that he is innocent, he essentially said that he's willing to go before the judges and, stand up to whatever case might be thrown at him. Because, assuming the judges are just, then any such case that is wrong would be thrown out. And if any of that stuff was really true, I mean, he has already essentially said, yeah, then let me be punished how I deserve. I mean, really, at this point, though, compared to what has happened in this testing, how much worse could it really get? So, I could get into more detail with all the different examples, but ultimately it's still kind of leading to the same general point. So, I think I'll just leave it at that so that I don't essentially end up repeating similar points over and over again. So, I suppose that's going to do it for Job chapter 31. Okay. Next chapter, after I have a little water here. Okay. Here we go. All right. We've made it to Job chapter 32. So, Job has been speaking for the last few chapters about his situation and his thoughts in general. Essentially, his righteousness and actually his mindset towards sin was called into question. So then he has essentially gone through a bunch of reasons why, he's pretty confident that he is still in the proper mindset. He is able to identify his own sin if he truly did sin. He also then still, gave the comparisons between how his life was before being tested by God and after, but yet still insisting that he hasn't done anything wrong because he is aware of all these kinds of things that, sinful people do. And, how he has not done the bad things, has done the good things, and the last chapter he basically challenged anyone to, make a case against him, prove him wrong, show the people that he has in fact sinned in some way that was deserving of everything that happened to him being a punishment from God. And actually, he kind of said he'd almost rather, get punished in some more earthly ways if he really did, sin in a particular way. Like, kind of the eye for an eye sort of mentality. But that's not what has happened to him. He lost practically everything that he had, including his children. Was, physically afflicted with boils and has just, he's had this terrible stuff happen to him for seemingly no reason. At least from his perspective. And so, with that, challenge in a way, and Job maintaining his innocence until somebody can prove otherwise, that's what brings us to this chapter here. So, here we go. Job chapter 32. Job's 3 friends refused to reply further to him because he kept insisting on his innocence. Now, is it because they were just tired of arguing, or because they, couldn't answer his previous challenge? Or, find anything else to say? I don't know. In any case, that was just verse 1. Moving on. Then Elihu, son of Barachel the Buzite, of the clan of Ram, became angry. He was angry because Job refused to admit that he had sinned and that God was right in punishing him. He was also angry with Job's 3 friends, for they made God appear to be wrong by their inability to answer Job's arguments. Elihu had waited for the others to speak to Job because they were older than he. But when he saw that they had no further reply, he spoke out angrily. Elihu, son of Barachel the Buzite, said, I am young and you are old, so I held back from telling you what I think. I thought those who are older should speak, for wisdom comes with age. But there is a spirit within people, the breath of the Almighty within them, that makes them intelligent. Sometimes the elders are not wise. Sometimes the aged do not understand justice. So listen to me, and let me tell you what I think. We'll get into that in a moment. So, totally different person who has not been part of the conversation now enters the chat, so to speak. So, I'm really curious what he thinks he has to say that could, prove Job wrong. Or is he really answering or, speaking more out of his own offense? Because, it said he was angry with Job's friends for they made God appear to be wrong by their inability to answer Job's arguments. Again, assumption is because it was the common theological framework of the day. Assumption is bad things happen to bad people. And only to bad people. God blesses those who do good and punishes those who do wrong. That's the framework, which, granted, they had plenty of evidence of. I mean, I don't know for sure when in the history of God's people that this is, but seemingly at least after settling into the Promised Land, because there was mention at some point, kind of in passing, but at some point, of something about settling the land. And, I mean, now it's specifically mentioning that Elihu is of the clan of Ram, and there wasn't really so much of that distinction between different tribes and clans and such before they settled the Promised Land. So, sometime after that, presumably. But otherwise, we don't know when this happened. So, even with that in mind, though, they had plenty of evidence, from their ancestors wandering the wilderness for 40 years. Potentially from the era of the judges, depending on when this happened. Plenty of evidence showing that, when God's people followed God, things went well. And when they didn't follow God, things went poorly, and they were punished. So, the evidence was there to make at least a general conclusion in line with their theological framework. But the problem is that they assumed that that is the case for every individual person all of the time. So with that, I would say mistaken assumption, Elihu is offended because he thinks that this conversation has potentially made God appear to be in the wrong. Which, I mean, if there were a blatant, obvious case of, somebody, trying to say that God was wrong or pointing out evidence that God was wrong and, it genuinely not being true, which, look, God just... a lot of people would argue, and I see no reason not to myself, that God is never really wrong. But I digress. If Elihu's feelings were really the truth of the matter, I could understand his anger. And in a way, I guess I still do understand his anger, because that's what he believes has happened. I'm also just saying I don't think he's right. I don't think his conclusions are correct. Because, again, there's an assumed situation about God and evil and sin and punishment that has taken a general truth and morphed it into an absolute law of nature in their minds, and it absolutely 100% of the time has to be true. Okay. So he says he didn't speak up until this point because he was trying to respect his elders, essentially, and, let them figure it out because they should know better than him. But now that it seems like the elders can't come up with a way to, in his mind, defend God, now he's going to speak up. I'm curious what this note in verse 8 about. He says, but there is a spirit within people, the breath of the Almighty within them that makes them intelligent. I guess he's saying that, yeah, okay, wisdom generally comes with age, but it's not necessarily true that, you know, that saying isn't necessarily 100% true all the time, because it's the spirit that gives people wisdom. It's not really just a fact of life that everybody is wise as they are, or when they are old. And you see, the way it has it in the note is just capital S spirit rather than lowercase s, which, especially putting a capital S there, would imply God's Spirit or the Holy Spirit. Apparently that also shows up in verse 18. We're not there yet. Yeah, so, I mean, shoot, as Job mentioned earlier when he was talking about the source of wisdom, it comes from God. It doesn't truly come from age. It might come with age most of the time because, you know, those who are truly following God would have had more time to figure things out and have that spirit help them discern. But, yeah, ultimately it's the spirit that gives them the wisdom, not the age. There was actually a footnote, or some kind of note, earlier in verse 3. So, when it says, he was angry with Job's friends, for they made God appear to be wrong. That's worded based on ancient Hebrew scribal tradition. The Masoretic text reads Job. It's meaning Job made God appear to be wrong, or that they made Job appear to be wrong. It would seem a little odd saying they made Job appear to be wrong, because they kind of didn't have any further arguments against him. So, yeah, not totally sure how to make sense of that alternate wording, but as it is, the translators apparently followed scribal tradition, which I don't see a reason to think that's the wrong way to go. Okay, anywho. And this is all one big, well, not big necessarily, but one paragraph chunk thing going from verse 11 on to the end of the chapter. So I guess I'll just read all of that and then see what other thoughts I have. So, verse 11. Still Elihu speaking. I have waited all this time, listening very carefully to your arguments, listening to you grope for words. I have listened, but not one of you has refuted Job or answered his arguments. And don't tell me he is too wise for us, only God can convince him. If Job had been arguing with me, I would not answer with your kind of logic. You sit there baffled with nothing more to say. Should I continue to wait now that you are silent? Must I also remain silent? No, I will say my piece. I will speak my mind. For I am full of pent-up words, and the spirit within me urges me on. I am like a cask of wine without a vent, like a new wineskin ready to burst. I must speak to find relief, so let me give my answers. I won't play favorites or try to flatter anyone, for if I tried flattery, my creator would soon destroy me. And that's where it ends the chapter, but there's no end quotation at the end of it, so Elihu's still going to be speaking in the next chapter. So, as the previous note mentioned... Sorry. So, as the previous note mentioned, in verse 18 here, when he says, "The spirit within me urges me on," could be capital S Spirit, implying the Holy Spirit. So, really, this part seems more to just be kind of a setup for the argument that Elihu is eventually going to make in the following chapter or whenever after this. But right now, he's just kind of setting it up, saying, all right, I have listened to you all so far. I listened because you are older, and I figured probably wiser than me. But now y'all don't seem to be answering Job. So I'm gonna say what I have to say now. Because I wouldn't have approached this the same way that you did. You friends of Job here. Quote, I would not answer with your kind of logic. So, he apparently seems to think he's going to take a different approach to possibly refuting Job. Meanwhile, at the end, saying he's not going to play favorites or try to flatter anyone. I think that's a nicer way of saying he's not going to mince his words. He's going to be blunt. Brutally honest, even. With what he thinks. Because, as he said, if he doesn't speak up and let out his words, then he is figuratively going to burst. So yeah, I'm not gonna... sorry. So, I'm not going to try to read too much into what Elihu might say or what type of argument he might try and form, because we're going to get to that eventually, I'm sure. So yeah, that's kind of the gist of what he has said so far and where things are leaving us with this chapter. So I guess that'll do it for Job chapter 32. And fully confirming that, yes, the next chapter does have more from Elihu. And the chapter after that. And the one after that. And the one after that. So, yeah, he goes on for a while. In any case, that's all that I have scheduled, so to speak, for right now. For Bible study related stuff. Okay. Getting some more water here. A, because I've been talking a lot and I will make my throat sore if I don't drink something. And B, because it's still really hot around. Like, even right now, when normally it would have started cooling down a bit, it is 98 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's just the quote-unquote actual temperature. Never mind the heat index that says, okay, with humidity and such, here's what it feels like. Okay. So, my plan for the rest of the stream after I run the next ad break is going to be doing the Underspire in Gems of War and just ripping through as much of that as I can. It's a little bit unfortunate, for lack of a better word, that there was also kind of a, limited, brief event going on in the meantime that is one that only shows up once every, few months that gives certain kinds of rewards that generally are, a bit more rare within the game. Because then maybe I could have put some more effort into the Underspire or other stuff. But anyway, enough talk about that before I really get into it. If nobody has anything else for the moment, I think I will just go ahead and run the next set of ads on Twitch and then hop into Gems of War. So Twitch folks, I guess I'll see ya on the other side of the ad break. Okay. That's running now. Gonna go ahead and get ready to shift over here. Make sure that I change the stream category on Twitch though. Gems of War. There we go. Done. Okay. Alright. Getting back into the game. Alright. Toning down background music while I shift over to that. I'm probably going to want to turn the game volume down quite a bit. This is perhaps one of the louder games that I play. There we go. Okay. I was like, I'm pretty sure it's been about an hour. Should be stuff showing up for me to claim. Alrighty. So, first off, broadly speaking, well, ad break's not over yet. Give me a sec. So first off, broadly speaking, been trying to at least do some stuff in the guild event. Haven't even used all my sigils for that. Secondly, another thing keeping me from doing a lot in the Underspire has been this, which is, they call it like a seasonal event, I guess. So, you pick these battles and those give you these specific, shop resource things that you spend on these particular rewards that get you, a new legendary troop and an associated pet to boost their stats, pet food to boost the pet that boosts the stats, and or if you feel like saving up for some of this other stuff, which an Orb of Power would be pretty nice, but also very expensive. And I can get those in other ways, at least eventually. Okay, so Underspire, I have not gotten very far in, partially because of all that. Okay, yeah, I think I already purchased the extra 5 torches for today. I've been purchasing 5 extra torches each day this week because of wanting to go further than usual in the Underspire. And the first purchase each day is the cheapest. That only costs 50 gems for 5 torches, I think, whereas the second time it's 100 gems, and after that, I'm not sure it'd be I'm not sure if it would be 150 or 200. But anyway, okay. Let's get rolling here. I've got a... Well, once it gets started, at least, I've got a team that rolls through the enemies pretty quickly. Assuming I don't, you know, plague myself with indecision. Okay, here we go. That's gonna hit all the enemies. Goodbye. So yeah. Again, given how little I've been able to do in the Underspire so far this week, I think it's a bit unlikely that during this live stream you will all get to see the end result of my attempts to go as far as I can. However, I still want to attempt it because last time I did attempt it, there was no, like, there wasn't this stuff with the treasure rooms like that. And, you know, other things were not part of the Underspire. I also didn't have nearly as many lanterns as I do right now. Where do I think... I don't know. Actually, I wonder if that would have been a good spot to use a lantern, because not only do lanterns, you know, double the rewards you get, especially from the boss battles or whatever, but it says that they, like, extend your vision by 1 room or something like that. I'd have to read the description of it. Lanterns will double rewards from battles and will extend vision by 1 room. So I'm almost wondering if, like, as I'm trying to find the keystone for here, if I should perhaps use a lantern. Because realistically, there's only 6 bosses to possibly get rewards from. So why not try and take advantage of the other supposed benefit of these? I say supposed because I don't know if I've ever tried to use it like that before. So I can't say for sure that it actually works like that. Yeah, what do you know? It did actually go 1 room further, although... it kind of only went in that direction. I was hoping possibly for even further than that. Although if this was really a dungeon type situation and there were walls blocking these things, then having a lantern here wouldn't let you see further beyond a wall. So I guess in a practical way I can understand that logic. Hypothetical, but practical. Oh, hey, look, a boss room. Sweet. I will use a lantern here to double the rewards, because why else am I even doing this? So yeah, of course I've got my hero doing a gem explosion thing to help with gaining mana. Takshaka's also kind of helping quite a bit with gaining mana, because that's the troop generating the wild cards, you know, with the ×3 and whatnot. Well, okay, that went rather poorly for me that turn. And I always get just a little bit worried when the Horde Mimic gets full mana, because one of the things it can do is devour, which would suddenly make it way more powerful. Now I do wonder if I get to like an intersection or a split, you might say. If I use a lantern there, I would hope that it projects 2 rooms out in, you know, all connected directions. But, yeah. When I'm just sitting here doing these battles, this is how quickly I can get through them. Now, I mean, most of the time, I'm okay with taking the trade-off of fewer battles for... Okay, see, there's a split. So I'm going to try using a lantern here. Anyway, most of the time I'm fine trading off some speed in the battles for, you know, a different way of doing it. Because, you know, the gameplay in Gems of War is pretty much all the same all the time. So finding a way to, you know, shake it up a little bit is not something I will argue with very often. Yep, that definitely went 2 rooms. Oh, it even went there, which is interesting. So when revealing, or when adjacent to another split, it will actually show what is adjacent to the second split. Well, now I'm extra not sure which way to go. But I suppose I'm choosing this path because while the one room up here is called a trap room, it does give some kind of rewards, you might say. So even if that doesn't lead to anything significant, I'll get the rewards from that trap room. Whatever. I was thinking I probably want to use this wild card, but how do I want to use it? Oh, man. Oh, hey, I leveled up. Earth Mastery's lower. I'll level that up. So yeah. It drops stuff. I have literally no use that I can think of for epic ingots right now, other than to convert those to better kinds of ingots, which I would then actually use to, you know, like, upgrade weapons. You know what? We're at another intersection. I'm gonna use another lantern here. I've got plenty. And, you know, as I'm using these lanterns, that also means I'm not using torches, which means, on the whole, I'm able to progress further. Okay. And wow, it led to a double dead end kind of situation. But one of the dead ends is this, which moves me to a totally different spot on the map. Okay, now this one might be worth using, like actually worth using a torch at, because it might actually reveal some more stuff. I should have figured, given the placement of that previous room, that it would have some dead ends attached to it. But yeah, enemies are already significantly tougher, if you didn't notice. So, like, that, which has been wiping out all the enemies so far, doesn't wipe them out so easily now. But, you know, I'm still good after a couple of attacks. Okay, well, there's the next gate I have to get to, but I'm not going to get to it that way. Alright. Right. I gotta do this room first before I get to the split. Oh, man. Also, I've been kind of a little willy-nilly in my, lantern usage. Or I guess, you know, I could say careless instead of using made-up words. I think I may want to hold off on using some lanterns for a little while. Spread them out a bit. Oh, hey, Xenon. Hello. Hope you're doing well. Sorry, I got majorly glued to the game for a second. Or maybe a minute. Haven't played this game in a hot minute. How we doing tonight? Well, speaking of hot, it's been a hot day around here, but I think that's been most of the U.S. Of course, I had to kind of sort of work in the heat, because there is no air conditioning where I work. There's fans, most of... There's fans in most of the building, but no air conditioning. Still, aside from that, not doing too bad. Although I am kind of hoping this weather doesn't persist, because, speaking of work, my place of work is essentially mandating overtime for most of the employees for a while. Not entirely sure how long, but a while. Because we lost some people, and a couple of machines have been down, and therefore we've lost production pretty significantly. So, in order to catch back up, while we also get some new people in and trained and whatnot, yeah, that's why they're bringing in the overtime. And if I have to work in this kind of heat on a bunch of those overtime shifts, I will be a significantly less happy camper. Maybe I shouldn't say significantly. Just, I wouldn't exactly like that fact. Well, I mean, the overtime would at least be overtime, and thus, 1.5 times the usual pay. But, yeah. In any case. Because of that, this is actually going to be my last live stream at this time frame. For a while. I might get back to it once the overtime stuff ends, but I don't know for sure when that's going to be. Nor do I think anybody at work knows for sure. Oh yeah, I'm not arguing with you that it deserves extra payment working in such conditions. So, anyway, Xenon, you said you haven't played this game in a while. How in a while are we talking? Because depending on how long it's been, I mean, there could be entirely new sections of the game. Never mind the fact that within the past year or two, I would say, most of the game's primary aspects have been significantly altered in some way. Or primary areas, maybe I should say. Played when it first came out, then off and on for a while. Haven't played in at least a year. Ah, so, yeah. If it's been a year, then, PvP might be different than you remember. Guild Wars in particular might be different than you remember. I'm not sure the Underspire, how much of a thing that was. But even that has had some fairly recent changes that I'm pretty sure were definitely within the past year. Yeah, were I not so focused on trying to... Geez, okay. So, I guess I'm actually between the purple and yellow gates here. Huh. Anyway. Yeah, I'm kind of focused on seeing how far I can get in the Underspire. this week as a whole, and in particular right now, given some of the recent changes to the Underspire, I'm thinking it might actually be easier to get to the quote-unquote end of it, which I have never seen. So that's kind of why I'm doing what I'm doing right now. Don't think the Underspire was a thing when I played last. Okay. So, I'm trying to think of what to compare the Underspire to then. So, like, I guess you could think of it sort of like a delve, but like team losses are not permanent between rooms. And it's just a long... I mean, really, it resembles more of what people would think of as like a dungeon or labyrinth kind of situation. I just didn't want to compare it to the dungeon part of Gems of War, because that's a very different kind of thing. But yeah, so you go through the different rooms in the Underspire. As you reveal them, of course, they show up on this broader map. But you have these gate things every once in a while where you have to pick up a certain keystone to unlock the gate, and then you can actually progress further. And of course, the holders of the keystones are like basically some of the boss dragon type troops that show up in the game. And those battles can give, like, actually will, not can, will give particular rewards, like different orbs and I was gonna say deeds. I'm not sure deeds are even a thing anymore, because they changed how the whole kingdom leveling system works very recently. So yeah, that's, I mean, I don't know, some people I have noted seem to dislike at least some of the changes that are made in the game here and there, but like, you can't say that the developers of this game are being lazy and not trying to keep the game fresh. Because I would say, especially within the past 3, almost beyond a shadow of a doubt, the past 5 years, that, like, quite literally every single aspect of the game has had a significant change. So yeah, I mean, how else do you keep a free-to-play game going for an extended time? Or really any game with, you know, significant online play in particular. It's like, I'm not gonna say that this is like, you know, the Fortnite of match 3 games, because really I think the changes to Gems of War, generally speaking, are more substantial than the changes that come to Fortnite. Because Fortnite, it's usually just, you know, new characters, new skins, whatever. Occasionally, there's a really big change. But I think on average, the changes in Fortnite are less significant than what I see in Gems of War. Anyway. Alright, so here's one of the boss rooms. I'm gonna use a lantern for this fight to double my rewards. Oh yeah, that's a thing I didn't talk about with the Underspire either. Oh yeah, so as you could see kind of there, above where I'm choosing which thing to use. So I would get 20 of the topaz gem things, and 10 cursed runes, or whatever those are called. But, you know, using a lantern, those get doubled. The keystones don't. Because, you know, there's only kind of one use for those, and it resets every week. Oh yeah, Underspire is a weekly thing that resets each time. Kind of, I would assume week to week it's sort of randomly generated within certain parameters. Like what the path would be to get through that week's Underspire. I know it's certainly not the same week to week. Ooh, Orbs of Ascension, nice. Those are kind of rare. So definitely glad I doubled those. I mean, I was planning to anyway. So yeah, this thing right here is what I figured will allow me to get further. Last time I tried to go as far as I could in the Underspire, this was not a thing. I revealed it at this end, a little ways past the first gate. And now this has pretty much warped me, for lack of a better way to put it, in between the 4th and 5th gates in this particular Underspire. So now, still having 23 torches and 17 lanterns, I can get through the 5th gate out of 6. I have never gone much beyond the 5th gate. Oh yeah, also, so, like, as you go further and further through the Underspire, the enemies are higher leveled and therefore harder to beat. That shouldn't really be too surprising. But, I forget. I've been so locked in, I'm like, I think I said I was going to talk about something else, and then I didn't, and now I might have forgotten what it was. Oh yeah, they also have these trinket things that can be used in each battle to, like, automatically have certain things, usually negative status effects on the enemies. The drop rates for those have increased significantly, especially since the last time I tried to do a, a deep dive through the Underspire. But, yeah. This is what I'm doing tonight. Underspire, presumably all the way. Especially because I've only got about half an hour left in my typical stream time. Also kind of glad this just kind of happened to fall on a week when the troop selection is pretty good for making a team that is both fast and probably able to deal with significant or otherwise significant challenges. Yep. I'm like, I figure that troop's probably gone if I hit it with Takshaka's spell, and yep, I was right. Yeah, I think out of all the troops in this team, the one generally dealing the least damage would be Mambasira. Well, maybe not necessarily. The one that's perhaps overall least helpful. Just because it's straight up damage, it's not true damage, and it's not boosted by anything in particular. But anyway. Seth, to answer your question, yes, kind of. I mean, I'm planning to spend some time with my parents, and I guess my little sister's probably going to be there too. I'm not so sure about fireworks though, because the weather's supposed to be much like today still. And so like going out somewhere to see fireworks is probably not going to be a thing. Also, that would keep me up quite late, which would, I mean, throw me off of my sleep schedule a bit. I would still have Sunday in between to make up for it in theory. But considering we're not probably even going to be particularly close to any fireworks shows because of the heat, I'm not sure if staying up to view the fireworks would then be very well worth it. I think part of the plan for when I'm visiting my family, though, involves Dad cooking some stuff on the grill, which I don't envy him doing that in this kind of heat. Maybe should have used a lantern there, because then I could have revealed more stuff. See, that's what happens when I multitask. I'm not as quick to think of what is perhaps the best in one activity while I'm also engaged with the other. Alright. Definitely want that Horde Mimic gone. Which it is now. Yay. Okay. Ooh, hey, that's a thing that I don't even have to do a battle. And there's the final gate. Now there is more stuff branching off from this gate. So, you know, it's been a little while. I think I'll use a lantern here to try and see further that direction. Well, I've never made it to the last gate before, so I don't know what might lie beyond it, if anything. But, I guess we'll see after this whether or not anything is beyond said gate. And yes, there definitely is something. Looks like it's just one more room that's gonna be like the final boss of this Underspire. I'm like, now which direction do I want to go from here? Because there's potential for this to go, like, way the heck up into the unexplored portions of the map. But yeah, man, that the whole warping thing has clearly made a ton of difference in my ability to progress. Yeah. You know, now that I've seen the final gate, and especially seen that there's just a singular boss room beyond it, now I'm really kind of hoping I can get to that within this stream. And I mean, I still got 20 minutes. Okay. I'm using a lantern here because it's another split. Can do the final boss, then continue. But yeah, I have to get the final keystone to open the gate to get to the boss. Then it'll just be kind of, okay, willy-nilly going around in other directions and seeing what else I might find. But still other directions probably close to the end, since, again, like, haven't been this far in the Underspire before. I'm more curious about what's near the end of it than I am about what I could possibly encounter near the start. Okay, I think I'm still gonna do that first. Yeah, okay. Figured with a high enough number. And those are all dead ends. Glad I used that lantern. So now I'm not going to waste my time going that way. Well, I might go back to that later, but first, final boss. Want to face final boss. Sure, we'll do an attack there, I guess. Did it, like, avoid that? Or... Nah, I don't know. Ooh, extra turn there. Dang! See, okay, that must have been some of the, assassin hero traits coming in. Because those definitely looked like insta-kill kind of things to me. Because it's not like I was directly dealing damage to them. Okay. I'm gonna keep trying this path. Hopefully it's not leading me towards some extended diversion that, you know, isn't... See, right there. Last enemy just instantly died. Well, 10% chance to assassinate the last enemy when I deal skull damage. Shocker. And then I think there's... yeah, there's also Rising Shadows. 7% chance to assassinate the last enemy when another enemy dies. Okay. That'll get rid of those two on either end. That'll just deal a bunch of damage. And there we go. Oh my gosh. How many twists and turns is this thing gonna make? Don't really see a way to use the wild card right now. And of course, they just happen to get it. Oh well. Gonna focus on the Umbral Portal first, because that can summon things. The other enemies cannot. Okay. And now that there's just one left, Mombasero might actually be able to deal enough damage to get rid of it. Hey, there we go. Huh. Can't say I expected the Ruby Lair to be the final one, although I guess that's the one dragon of that series set thing that doesn't match the colors of the other gates. So, Anyway, because I can, I'm going to use a couple of trinkets on this one. And, of course, a lantern to double the rewards. I wonder, so if I got an Orb of Ascension from the last one, what kind of orb am I going to get from this? Took a little bit of a risk using the wild card instead of doing the skull match. But hey. I think it's working so far. Or working out. Okay. Yeah, I do think there are some team stipulations that would have made these battles take immensely longer. Major Orbs of Glory and 2 Orbs of Chaos. Jeez. So Major Orbs of Glory are the ones that will, like... trying to think of how to word it. So, like, once you get a troop to its maximum ascension, all traits, max level, and all that kind of stuff, there's 3 glory levels, so to speak, that can then be achieved to further increase their stats. But you have to, like, trade in some of the medals and stuff typically to do that. Okay. Final boss room. What is it? Of course, it's Diamantina for the enemy. And, okay. 20 gems, 50 Dragonite. A pet orb? Can't say I expected a pet orb, but okay. Not complaining. I generally don't use those, but doesn't hurt to have them. And really, there are some of the pets that maybe I should consider using that on, because they're kind of rare pets that don't show up a whole lot and might otherwise take forever to truly max them out. Although maxing them out wouldn't necessarily do a whole lot, because usually the rare ones are the event pets that are cosmetic only. And, well, shoot, there's going to be a skull match left. If I do either of the spells I have available, or either of these 2 from Mambasira or Uriali. So maybe I'll do this instead. And Diamantina just died to the death mark, I think. Alright. Now it's mostly gotta be on Takshaka to get me the mana that I need. Or at least to help move that along a bit quicker. Yeah, so I can't say I'm surprised at, you know, the enemy, or the highlighted enemy, at least, of the final boss room. Oh yeah, it calls it Orb of Minions, but it's definitely for, like, the pets to, I guess, increase their level cap or whatever. But anyway, okay, well, there was that. I did it. Apologies if that feels at all anticlimactic. But yeah, given that it was the, you know, Crystal Dragon set that was featured, not at all surprised at Diamantina being the final boss. I suppose it's also quite fitting that the final dragon boss gives Dragonite for the reward, because that's what's used to get the dragon troops in the first place. So now that I have accomplished that, will I ever try to do it again? Maybe. But probably not for a while. Because, I mean, admittedly, I would have had to either stockpile more lanterns, or I might already have had to wait until tomorrow when I would get more torches to be able to actually, you know, make any more progress than this. Because, yeah, I'm down to 14 torches. I've been buying 5 a day since Monday. So that was 20 torches purchased right there. See, okay, these rooms, like, the rewards for them don't seem to be a whole lot greater, even though we're near, like, the end of the Underspire. So this is when it might actually be more beneficial to go back near the start. Because I could get similar kinds of rewards, and they would be much easier to obtain. Or at least the battles would be much easier. How did I miss that move? Definitely should have done that. That was an extra turn right there. Okay. I mean, that wasn't a terrible reward. Yes, Starstones, that's another new thing, but totally different, feature in the game. Well, what do we think? Should I go back to the early part of the map, or stick around closer to here and see what else I can find as far as, like, things with rewards? Or, I mean, we could kind of randomize it at this point. It is that... Oh, well, yeah, it is also close to the end of the stream time, huh? Next ad break will kick in like 6 minutes, if I don't do it myself. Just for one last little comparison, You know, you saw how much effort was going into those battles close to the final boss. And now if I go way back earlier on... Well, I guess it depends a little bit on how the mana falls. Because if I don't get the right troops to use their spells, it can still take a while. Anyway. Okay. Oh my gosh, what the heck? My phone is vibrating like crazy. Just making sure nothing important's going on with it. I know what it is. Yeah. I should have suspected something. Surprise, surprise. New person to the Discord server is another spam bot. At least I'm pretty sure. Which I should have suspected the moment I tried to look at their profile information. It said they had only been on Discord at all, I think, since like a few days ago. So, I don't know if, Xenon the Dead is still watching. But to anybody who might be in a similar situation where you haven't played this game in a while, yeah. Here's what PvP looks like. You got different areas that, like, you can actually face some not so PvP battles and get like passive effects for a few hours. There's also each day, like, there'll be a citadel, a couple of citadels available to specifically, you know, fight there, and that'll give you stuff. Extra stuff, I should say. There's specifically a PvP shop where you get, like, exclusive pets and, even otherwise unavailable, at least at the moment, rare and mythic troops. Oh yeah, and then there's the whole kingdom leveling thing that changed significantly. So, like, instead of scrolls and stuff, you use, trying to think of how to... No, don't want to set that as my home kingdom. Yeah, you use these things instead. Which, the individual colored ones only apply to kingdoms that use those colors. The other ones give more experience, but they're also more rare. And those ones can be used anywhere on any kingdom. There's also a list of tasks that'll just, like, automatically give you kingdom experience towards leveling that kingdom. Oh yeah, and then, of course, there's the whole Astral Spire thing. That's pretty new. So you get this specific kind of Starstone resource, and you use them for different nodes in these constellation thingies here that'll then give you passive bonuses or in this case, a passive debuff to the enemy. And that, I think, is just straight up permanent across the board. So, like, in a way, it should kind of make the battles easier for you. Of course, also makes, like, defense in Guild Wars that much more difficult, but anyway. And Twitch ad break kicked in. That was about all that was really new anyway. Because the underworld hasn't really changed much other than possibly adding a couple of factions to correspond with some newish kingdoms. I mean, Midnight is the newest kingdom. Really, I mean, even for multiple years, if you went back multiple years, I don't think any of these kingdoms would be new other than Midnight, Hellcrag, Nexus, and Volpacia. The other ones have been around quite a while. Hey. There's a task to collect. Actually, apparently multiple somehow. But anyway. Merlantis leveled up. Which I shouldn't be surprised at, because the seasonal event thing gives a Merlantis troop. And pet, presumably. But anyway, okay. Enough random talk about, you know, newer features in Gems of War. Or some of them just new-ish. Okay. I think that'll about do it for me tonight. Gotta make use of, you know, having spare time while I still can, because again, starting next week, 7 more hours of what would otherwise be my spare time are going to be used each week. Are we continuing until we lose all the torches, or are we I think at this point there's not really anything too new about the Underspire to show off that hasn't been seen. So, at this point, I am thinking we raid. The question is who to raid. Well, while I figure that out. So, tomorrow will be my last regular Friday stream. After that, Saturdays are going to be the default. But if something comes up that would make me busy on a Saturday, I'm open to doing Friday nights. In any case, tomorrow will be Borderlands 4 story progress. We left it off where we're, I think, ready to try and infiltrate the, like, final area that we need to for the story. Or at least the timekeeper, the timekeeper's, like, kind of main citadel, fortress, headquarters, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, that Borderlands 4 tomorrow afternoon. And then the following week, it's going to be Saturday morning Bible study and game story progress, specifically Hogwarts Legacy, in 2 weeks. And then the Bible study will keep going as it has been, but then, yeah, the game will bounce back and forth between Hogwarts Legacy and Borderlands 4. Okay. I have been looking at people to potentially raid, and nothing like super duper stands out. Seeing some people playing certain games I didn't necessarily expect. In any case, well, let's see here. So here are the games being streamed by people I follow and could consider rating. We've got somebody playing Lies of P, Rocket League, a couple of people playing Fortnite, Disney Dreamlight Valley, I would say what Chrono's doing, but I think we rated him recently, so I think I'll pass on that. Got League of Legends, Final Fantasy 14 Online, Halo Master Chief Collection. If none of those are really standing out, I think I might just send the raid over to Chronicle because it's been a little while. She's the one playing Lies of P, by the way. Okay. I suppose then I will initiate the raid, and that will wrap things up. So, thanks for watching, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the stream. Hopefully, I'll be able to catch you all on some Saturdays moving forward. But I understand if, Saturday mornings in particular are not your normal preferred time. But feel free to check out YouTube stuff because my streams are archived there. So whatever you miss, you can see when it's not live over there. Also, edited individual things. Might lose the streak with Saturday mornings. I'm sorry a little bit, but also, it's kind of got to be what works for me. In any case, yeah. That's all I got. Whatever ends up happening until next time. Stay cool, everybody.